Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Lindsay. Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Lindsay, I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today. But before we dive into the subject, maybe just let us know who you are. Tell us a little bit about what you love about marketing, a little bit about your career, just so we can kind of get to know you and set the stage for today's conversation.
Sure. So I'm Lindsay, and I call myself a fractional content marketing consultant. So I've been freelance now for about 5 or 6 years, but obviously worked, in the corporate world and worked for startups as well before that. I've been in marketing for about 10 years, various roles. However, I've been mainly focused on content marketing for the last, for a majority of that. And I'm also a digital nomad, so I've been traveling kind of around the world these last couple of years as well, so building my business, working from anywhere, and doing all that stuff. So, what I love about content marketing, I love to be able to authentically tell a story, through different formats, whether that be for a personal brand or a company brand. I've done it for both. I've done it for my own brand. I've actually also been a ghostwriter for leaders of companies as well. So that was an interesting experience. I love to be able to tell stories through various formats with digital growth.
I love it. And that is a perfect introduction for the subject today, building a personal brand. Now, this is becoming more and more important. LinkedIn is becoming more of a social network than ever before. People are promoting themselves in different ways. But really, Lindsay, why should someone consider building a personal brand? And why is that important in today's market for someone to have a personal brand?
So I would just first start off by saying, things are getting so competitive, whether you're a freelancer or an in-house marketer. As we all know, the way things are going with the economy and just, speaking from my perspective as a freelancer, there's been a lot since the pandemic, a lot of people not just going in one direction. Some people actually got full-time roles and they want to explore a side hustle or just to be able to expand their skill set and have that as an additional stream of income. That's been a huge thing for me as well, just exploring different avenues of income. So I would say your personal brand is really how you can set yourself up as unique. It's your kind of key differentiation, in my opinion, whereby, you don't just have a bare profile on LinkedIn, or you're just kind of operating with a resume and that's it. People want to be able to kind of look you up, and you want to make it as easy as possible. So one of the questions a curious question that I like to ask people is when you Google your name, what comes up? Have you done that? Have you ever done that? I do it every once in a while. But I'm also intentionally building my brand, so I kind of know what's out there, whether it's guest posting on other blogs or being on a podcast such as this one. I've done a couple of podcast interviews now over the last couple of years, and this is all just kind of what I say, one drop in the bucket of building your brand and creating this kind of online presence for yourself so that people have a good impression of you.
I love that. So when you're looking at developing a personal brand, you're really bought into this concept, you need to do it. How do you understand and figure out your own personal view or what you're going to do that makes you different and original and uniquely you? How do you go about discovering that and learning that about yourself?
So when I first started out, that was my mistake. It was not necessarily a mistake. We all go through this journey of okay, I'm going to consume as much as possible. I'm going to look at what everybody else out there is doing and not necessarily copy, but it's I just didn't have faith in myself that I had good ideas or that I had enough of my own experience or things to share. And so this is why I say that it's a journey, because you might have to do that in the beginning. You might really want to immerse yourself. And, I wouldn't say just go consuming willy-nilly, but like find other people in your industry that maybe are successful in your eyes. Like, don't just go chasing vanity metrics, like, looking for the people that have hundreds of thousands of followers. That's not how I go about it. I go about it like I put myself almost in the shoes of a consumer. And I do this with my clients as well, as like, put yourself in the shoes of someone consuming that content or reading that story. How is it making you feel? Does it feel compelling? Does it feel engaging? And then like try it on for size, I guess you could say, or like filter it through your own lens. And also don't just like consume the content and try to emulate that, but like look at kind of the ideas and the strategies that you're using and see if any of those like resonate with you. I would say that's one thing you could do. But for me, it really was trial and error. It was like all these different kind of things, like trial and error in the beginning, consuming what other people are doing. But then after like about a year of that, I was like, okay, information overload. And for me, it was like a year or two after the pandemic. I launched my business in 2018, and that's when I kind of started building my personal brand at the same time. But after about a year, I had information overload, and I was just like, okay, no, I need to go into my own kind of creative space, whether that's daily, weekly. And now my process kind of looks like, I will get an idea that I'll kind of want to run with. Or if I'm not sitting down at my desk, like I have a running notes tab in my phone. And I'm like, that would be a great like content idea. Let me just jot that down. And so like I always have some running notes tabs, whether it's Google Doc or on my phone. And then when I am ready to sit down and like start creating content for me, for my personal brand, I go back into those notes and it kind of re-sparks that inspiration for me. But yeah, just looking for like being open for that inspiration as well, whether it comes from another person or yourself. And then also stories, like your own stories, your own personal journey stories. What are things you've been through that you learned something from? Like when I first started building my brand online, a lot of what I wrote was stories of like, this was a challenge that I was faced with. This is how I overcame it. This is what I learned from it. Because I think a lot of people get stuck on, well, I have to be a teacher. I have to show up and teach my knowledge. And that is a part of it, but it shouldn't be the only thing, because you want to take people on this journey with you. Like look at your personal brand as the journey of you when it comes to personal growth. And because a lot of people have that question too of like, well, how much do I share? I don't want to get too personal. I don't want to share so much about my life. And I'm like, no, it's not necessarily that you have to do that. I kind of frame it in the lens of, since I'm building a business, there's obviously like a lot of things that come up around that, like on my journey, personal growth, personal development. So for someone that might be like in-house, maybe the journey of they're like looking to climb the ranks in the company. Maybe one day they see themselves like higher up in a higher up position. Maybe we tell the story of like how you're going from entry level to that role.
I love how you talked about you don't have to always be teaching something. I think sometimes we often feel like we have to be obligated to teach some kind of a lesson. But I love how you're talking about bringing them on like your journey with you. And so I look at like your own personal journey with you being like a digital nomad, like you said, and how cool your content must be to say, this is why I'm really a creative person for the businesses I work with. Kind of taking that journey and the unique perspective of saying, I have a fresh outlook on everything I do because of this and that, or whatever it may be. So how can you turn your journey into an advantage? What can you do when you're building a personal brand that will attract the kinds of businesses you want to work with, or the kind of roles that you want to have or get hired for? How can you leverage that to kind of position yourself for the next step? And for where you would like to go with your brand and your career?
Yeah, so I guess like in a simple answer that obviously we can expand on is just ensuring that everything that you share, I hate to sound cliche, like I was going to say everything you share has value, but in some ways you kind of do. Like, but a value for different reasons, you know, like when you're sharing a personal-ish story, like that's like you're almost kind of you're sharing your authenticity, you're sharing more about who you are as a human, you know, and then in another like post that's saying you are sharing your knowledge because you want to if you want to position yourself as authoritative or maybe just knowledgeable in your industry, like you want to kind of showcase your knowledge and your skills in that way. But I would say like to kind of showcase your uniqueness, you do want to come up with like, you know, kind of different perspectives, different point of views. I mean, this is kind of like thought leadership, which is what I help a lot of my clients with. And I kind of also consider myself a thought leader in different ways. And some people cringe at that now too, but it is what it is, for lack of a better word. That is how you're going to stand out. You have your own unique stories. You have your own unique perspectives. And maybe you have your own unique way of doing things. Like that's kind of what I also focus on as well as a freelance consultant, is sharing what my unique processes are, sharing like you were saying earlier, like the pressure of showing up to teach. It's not necessarily that you're showing up to teach, you're sharing what you're learning, you know? So that little bit of a different kind of perspective, vantage point there, like you're going through your own process and you're sharing what you're learning in that process, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're putting yourself on a pedestal, because that's another big thing that comes across when I work with even people in established higher up positions, sometimes even not even just people in, you know, like around my age or, you know, people that are still lower in their journey, let's say. They don't want to give off the impression that they are some, you know, big shot influencer online or something like that. So that I say it's just about, you know, emotionally connecting. Like for me, it was a process for my own personal growth as well, to put myself out there, you know, to like the public online. You know, that helped me move and traverse through my getting out of my comfort zones and making myself a little bit more uncomfortable, and being able to have the confidence to show up on a podcast interview like this. Or I did a couple like virtual kind of panel style conferences. I've always had like a huge fear of public speaking. Like I still think I'd be very nervous to stand on a stage and talk in front of live people. But even when I first started out building my brand and putting myself out there and even getting on video, like now I'm posting videos on LinkedIn. I just started that as kind of a creative project for myself this year. But prior to that, I was like, for several years, I was too nervous to do that. So I feel like the great thing about it is it's not just about like getting a client or getting a job. It's you're building up your own skills, your speaking skills, your presentation skills, your confidence. Like there's just so many advantages to doing this. Yeah. But like there's no hard and fast rule, you know, like sure, I could have, you know, started going on podcasts or, you know, speaking in front of people online like in the beginning, but I wasn't ready for that. But after like dipping my toes in different areas and consistently showing up, you know, of course there were times where maybe for a month I didn't post anything online. I had my peaks and valleys as well, and I would get on myself about that. I would get like upset with myself about it. Like, oh, I'm not doing what I said I would be doing. Like I'm not showing up often enough. And I'm like, in retrospect, I'm like, no, I probably just needed a break, especially after the pandemic year. I took that year to really like just put my head down and focus on my business and doing a lot of these things that we're talking about. But after that year was when I decided I was going to start traveling, and I took a little bit of a step back. I was like, my brain is like fried from this past year. So I think why I'm bringing this up, because everyone's journey will look different. And you can always come back to the drawing board. You can always evolve and pivot. You're not stuck in, you know, there's this whole thing around like building your brand identity. But like what I realized in that process is like, it's an evolving process. Just as we evolve as humans, our brand is going to evolve with us. As long as we continue to show up authentically and, you know, we're projecting an image of ourselves that's authentic, then I think that we're on the right path.
I love that. I love that. I think that is a great way to end. If anyone wants to connect with you and continue the conversation, how can they reach out and find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the easiest place to find me.
We'll include your profile in the show notes and link to it and everything. Again, Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.